The air vibrated as if the savannah were suddenly breathing. First, there was the tall column of sand, swirling furiously. Then, a gleam on the ground, flakes dragging like a living shadow. Two girls ran without looking back. The wind was pushing them toward the shelter. The snake, toward them. The morning had begun with deceptive calm. The blue sky, the suspended dust, the acacia trees casting short shadows. Iara and Mía walked along the small sandy road that connected the hamlet to the river. They were going for water and some silence after the previous night's whirlpool. The road smelled of hot earth and dry leaves. In the middle of the plain, the ground began to rumble. In the distance, a column of sand rose like a whirlwind. It wasn't a full-blown storm, it was an old whirlwind that came back to life with every breath of wind. The girls looked at each other. There was no time to argue. They ran toward a solitary house, an unpainted brick shed built on a small rise. There, they thought, the whirlwind would lose its force. As they ran, another story moved close to the ground. A huge BOA, as thick as the trunk of a young tree, moved silently along the side of the road. It had followed traces of life left by the storm, feathers, footprints, the scent of fear. Some wild dogs discovered it and barked in the distance, not daring to close the circle. The snake opened its mouth, displaying rows of curved teeth. It wasn't a challenge, it was a warning. The whirlwind approached, pounding with its hollow voice. The entire savannah seemed to duck. A group of cows broke into a run, kicking up dust. The girls reached the shed just as the wind stole the breath from their mouths. They closed the door and pressed against the wall. Inside was a small corral with pigs, buckets of water, a wooden table, and a tiny window that rattled like a sheet of glass. The air swirled. The roof creaked. The wood held. Minutes passed that felt longer than usual. The whirlwind, like all others, couldn't last. It broke in the distance, and silence returned suddenly. Iara and Mía breathed a sigh of relief. They went out carefully to inspect the damage. There were branches on the ground, sand in the buckets, leaves inside the house. Nothing that couldn't be fixed with patience. In the distance, a shimmer moved through the grass. Iara saw it first. It wasn't sun on the ground. It was the slithering of a large snake. She felt a brief chill on her back. She touched Mía's arm and pointed without speaking. Mía squinted to focus. It took her a second to understand. The BOA wasn't confused. It was picking them out. Inside, Iara said. They returned to the shed and secured the door with a plank. The pigs grunted nervously. The silence outside grew heavier, as if the landscape were holding its breath. Mía looked out the window. She saw the snake's body moving forward, pressed against the wall, searching for some crack. She heard a rustling. It wasn't wind. It was muscle against brick. To ease the tension, the girls decided to clean up the remaining mess. Sweep sand, collect branches, and trim whatever they could. They also had to bring fresh water. If the whirlpool returned, they would need to be prepared. With the sun already high and the air thinner, they grabbed a couple of buckets and walked toward the river. They moved forward carefully, without saying much, as if each step might make more noise. The BOA, meanwhile, had changed its strategy. It found the corral, and the smell of pork reached its memory of hunger directly. It slipped under the fence, swift for its size, and chose its prey with precision. The savannah was a silent witness to the scene, a decision, a flex of muscle, the certainty of food. When it was finished, it returned to the girls' trail. It wanted them, not out of necessity, but out of a hunting instinct awakened by movement and noise. In the river, the world seemed different. The water ran clear, with leaves that traveled like little boats. Iara washed a couple of cloths while Mía filled the buckets. They spoke little, the kind of conversation sustained between heartbeats. Did you see the shine? Yes. Do you think it'll go away? I don't know. They were silent. The wind carried a smell that wasn't from the river. It was from stirred-up dust. They looked at each other and knew it was time to go back. The path back felt shorter and longer at the same time. As they approached the house, Mía raised her hand for Iara to stop. On the earth, S-shaped marks widened the pattern on the ground. They weren't from before. They were from now. Something heavy had passed through there on the way to the shed. Their hearts pounded in their necks. Slowly, Iara said. They circled around the side of the corral to peer through the planks. They saw the fence sagging in one spot and stains in the disturbed earth. It wasn't time to ask what had happened. They entered carefully. Inside, the air was cooler. The pigs were no longer grunting. A rustling could be heard from the back room, the one that overlooks the backyard. Then everything happened quickly. Iara advanced to the back door. She looked and lost her voice. The BOA took up half the yard, a body that seemed to go on forever. It was in a waiting position, its head raised, its tongue tasting the air. Mía took a step, and a bucket scraped against the table. The metal made a sharp sound. The snake turned and saw her. That second was a thread that almost broke. "Run," Iara said, and pushed Mía toward the exit. Mía tripped over a rope and fell. The BOA took advantage of the noise and attacked diagonally, like a whip seeking to circumvent. Iara lifted a wooden bench and placed it between the snake and her friend. The blow of its head against the wood sounded hollow. There was no time to think. Iara shouted to Mía to go out through the backyard and lure the animal toward the open area, away from the front door. Mía ran. The BOA followed her with its gaze. Iara picked up a long stick leaning against the wall, one of those used for moving firewood. It wasn't a perfect weapon, but it was what it was. The snake spun again toward the nearest movement, Iara. She gave a sharp blow that left the stick vibrating. Iara took a step back, gauging the distance. Mía was already in the yard, with the exit to the field in sight. The plan was simple: lure the BOA into the open space, gain an angle, use the stick to press its head against the ground, and give the other BOA time to help. The execution was another story. The snake advanced with the confidence of one who dominates the terrain. Iara smelled the metallic smell of fear in her mouth. She breathed once, counted 2, and stepped out into the yard. There, the sun cut sharp shadows and the earth was loose. A good place to avoid tripping. The BOA pounced. Iara placed the stick diagonally across it and slid it down with her full body weight. The animal's head hit the ground and it thrashed furiously, like a live wire. Mía took advantage of the opportunity to circle around behind it and grab another stick. Together, they managed to maintain control for a few seconds, but the snake's strength was greater. Iara's stick creaked. "Now!" Mía shouted. Iara shifted her position, pressing the neck just behind the head, where control is possible. Mía used the second pole as a lever on the mid-body to take torque off the twist. The snake, frustrated, coiled around itself, trying to free its head. Dust rose in small spirals. Minutes stretched into a taut rope. The opportunity came when the animal tried to reverse the coil. That shift left its head briefly on the ground line. Iara lowered her weight with precision. Mía quickly threw a bucket of water directly into the snake's eyes. It didn't harm her, but it distracted her just enough to make her lose her bearings. That second was enough. Iara's pressure gained the upper hand. Mía pushed back with the stick, directing her body toward the open fence. With seemingly rehearsed coordination, they freed Iara's stick without allowing the snake to regain its angle. With shoves and sand, they guided her toward the gate. The BOA, exhausted from the effort, chose the least costly way out. She escaped by sliding her body into the open field. When she disappeared into the tall grass, the girls remained still, breathing as if the air had once again become their own. They didn't celebrate immediately. They closed the gate, reinforced the fence, and calmly checked every corner of the shed. Then they sat on the threshold, buckets at their sides, and drank water in silence. The wind, gentler, passed through the acacia trees like a whisper. The savannah regained its usual sound, insects, birds, the murmur of the river, which once again became a river and not a border. As the light fell, they cleared the last trace of sand from inside the house. Iara looked at Mía and smiled wordlessly. They hadn't defeated the savannah. They had learned to move within it. They kept the sticks behind the door, not as trophies, but as tools that might be needed again someday. Before going to sleep, they went out into the yard for a moment. The sky had filled with cold stars. They thought about the whirlpool and the snake, about the dogs they had unwittingly noticed, about the cows running away on instinct, about the empty corral. The world wasn't safer, but it was clearer. They knew that calm isn't the absence of danger, it's knowing what to do when it returns. At dawn, they walked again toward the river. The path no longer felt like a corridor of fear, but like a place they had learned to read. The S-shaped markings were erased by the wind. The water was less murky. They filled their buckets without haste and walked back with a firm step. The shed, from a distance, seemed smaller, but more theirs. Moral: courage isn't standing up against the savannah, it's reading it. Recognizing danger, standing together, and choosing the right move at the right time.